Hi folks, and welcome to another real and raw conversation. This time we're going to discuss the current affairs in Israel. We have a couple of topics in mind, but I think the main one is the fact, or maybe still a rumor at this point, that Hebron could join the Abraham Accord. So let's see how much of that is on the cards, what impacts will bring to the, not only to Israel, but to the region as such. And for that purpose, I have my co-host, Marco Alexander, directly from Jerusalem. I have Rafael Castro Martinez, who is based in Berlin. And in a few minutes, we also have Niram Ferretti diving in from Italy. So if that's something that you are into, stay around for the next 60 or 90 minutes. We'll do deep dive in these topics. And if you have something to share, make sure to use the chat box, because it's there for you to interact and to make this conversation as dynamic as possible. If you have been enjoying our show, the best way to reward us is to subscribe. If you already have done so, thank you very much. The other thing you can do to help us promote the show is to share it with your friends and with your colleagues, and to even with your neighbors. So whoever is into this sort of conversation and is not aware of what we do, it would be good if you can share, because we need to enlarge our crowd and make sure that we can echo in different parts of the planet. If you also are satisfied with the content delivered here, it would be great if you can press the like button below. And so that's my asks. I also want to mention that we have a new sponsor, so I'm going to show you. Who is he? He's an Israeli designer based in the States. His name is Royi Berkovitz. So I'm not very good with Eastern European language, although I spent some time living in Central Eastern Europe. So I'm going to show you some of his stuff. He has hoodies, hats, T-shirts, caps, wristbands, and some of them are customized for the pro-Israeli crowd, and the other is for the general public, with a focus on animal fun. So I just want to show you some of his stuff, and the link is in the description. There's a discount code there at your avail. So if you want to order something, you can get a good deal and also support us. So let me just show you a couple of his designs. So I'll start with the pro-Israeli items. I'm going to navigate only through the T-shirts, but you can get a flavor of what sort of stuff he does. So we have T-shirts in different colors, different shapes, different message, and for different people. So we have here youngsters, males, females, with different way of displaying their love for Israel and disgust for certain individuals that I'm not going to name. I'm also showing, I hope, the animals. Am I showing the animals, guys? Marco, and am I showing the animals?
No.
Animals, I don't see any animals.
Okay, I'm going to show you the animals in a sec. Sorry, I'm still not that confident with this. So for the animals, there are all sorts. It's a complete jungle. So you have T-shirts with pandas, turtles, giraffes, mooses, horses, camels, you name it. So if you're interested in this sort of creative design, make sure to get into the website, order T-shirt, a hoodie, or a hat for yourself or for a friend, and that's a great way to support independent business like Royi and ourselves. So yeah, I want to share that, and I pass the ball to Marco to introduce what are you here for.
Well, this evening we're going to discuss the possibility of extending the Abraham Accords to certain entities within the land of Israel. When I speak of certain entities, I'm talking about cities where the population is majority Arab, and in the specific case, we're going to speak about Hebron, where the idea has been floated, namely to detach from the PA and form a different political unit, how it will actually function, how it will integrate or interlock with the Israeli economy, with Israeli security requirements, of course, is something that we don't know enough about. But it is a plan that certain people have been working on as a potential solution to the conflict here. And one of the most important people involved in this project is a gentleman called Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Who's a very interesting fellow. He's been banging on about this possibility for years, and it seems as if at last somebody has begun to take notice. Okay, and the person who's taken notice of this is Nir Barakat, who's a minister in the Israeli government, formerly the mayor of Jerusalem, and some interesting unofficial meetings have taken place. I think it should be borne in mind that Hebron is the only city in the West, in Judea and Samaria, with a real and vibrant economy. This should be borne in mind. And I think these are some of the premises that are worth exploring and elaborating on. And to that end, this evening, we have our good and learned friend, Rafael Castro. We're awaiting Niram Ferretti, but in the meantime, we can discuss something a little more. Go ahead, Vitor, go ahead.
I want to share a very funny post that Rafael throw on his Facebook feed, I believe yesterday. So with your permission, I'm going to share your feed, and I'm going to invite people to follow you on Facebook. Why not? It's always good to increase your connections in social media. You might get some interesting people interacting with you, but why not? So I really found it creative the way you put it, because there are some humoristic elements, but also some truth into what you are saying. And that's the way I like people to communicate. So you mentioned, Bibi, why did you nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize? Trump's odds of winning were once 5%. Now they are lower than mine. Do you want to unpack this comment?
Yeah, because I think that the nomination of Netanyahu was the kiss of death for Trump's candidacy. I mean, right now Netanyahu in the Western world, and especially in Scandinavia and the circles that decide who will be the Nobel Prize winner, I mean, is probably worse. It's somewhere between the reputation of Pinochet and Pol Pot. So, I think that if Trump had been a little bit more realistic, he would have thanked Bibi and told him, thank you very much for making sure I'll win the Peace Prize probably in my next reincarnation. But I mean, Netanyahu obviously meant it well, and I think that Trump appreciated, the fact that Israel is now together with Pakistan in, united admiration for Trump's undoubtable accomplishments.
Let me ask the viewers, what are the chances for Trump to get the Nobel Prize between 0 to 5%? Is it 1%? Is it 2.5? Is it 4? Yeah. So if they can put on the chat, we can see how optimistic they are. If it's 4.5, it's not bad.
I mean, you're only offering me, numbers in the positive spectrum. I don't think there is a positive spectrum here. I mean, we can talk about negative numbers.
Yeah, I have to check. I would be astonished. Rafael, I need to check the betting pages, because sometimes they come up with some strange predictions, and I want to see what are the odds for Trump.
Let's check them now.
I can check as we speak. Yeah.
Or maybe you can check, how if they moved after the nomination of Netanyahu.
Yeah.
By the way, by the way, on a personal note, I mean, aside from the financial considerations, I'm not sure I would want to keep company with Obama, Yasser Arafat, and some other people, illustrious winners. I'm certainly Obama did nothing apart from holding certain political views. He had no merits in international policy. His accomplishments were next to zero, and that's looking at it in a positive light. And Yasser Arafat, of course, is one of the great criminals of the 20th century. Not only a criminal for what he's done against the Jewish people, but for the evil he has practiced upon those people he purported to represent. So I'm not sure, aside from the financial considerations, whether the Nobel Prize is worth pursuing.
So I just had a look, guys. And do you think Trump made it to the top 10?
No idea. Tell me.
No, but you need to guess. Like, you need to guess.
Yes. You know,
Marco.
No, I wouldn't commit myself on this. But anything's possible, by the way. Anything's possible.
There's no money on the table. There's no money on the table.
Trump, what can be said for President Trump is that he does not like wars. He'll do his utmost to avoid them, even when on certain occasions they might prove to be necessary. The problem is he may misunderstand America's role in the world. America is a big fish, and he tends to want to isolate America in a certain sense. The problem is a big fish in a goldfish bowl is ready to go into the frying pan, and America can't really disengage from the international scene. America needs to swim like a big fish in the wide open spaces of the ocean. In a goldfish bowl, it'll end up in the frying pan.
So let's have a look at the table. Sorry, Rafael. I think at this point everyone is very eager to see if Trump is in the top 10. And I think that will shock the majority of us because he is. Okay, so I'm going to show you that he's in the top 10, and his position, it's not to be underestimated. I'm talking about Paddy Power. They are experts in betting. They are not throwing money off the window. So Trump is now number 2.
Oh, I see. Right.
Trump is number 2. He's ahead of Greta. He's ahead of Antonio Guterres. And he's ahead of Zelensky. And he's number 2, and he's not that far from number 1, Yulia Navalnaya.
And who is I don't recall who is Yulia Navalnaya?
Actually, I don't know. You know, Rafael?
Anonymous person.
No. I know that Navalny she's probably the widow of Navalny, the Russian dissident who was murdered by
dissident.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Good. And
so we have a couple of comments here. Sorry, just want to throw the comments. We have a comment from Patricia. I remember Patricia from Guerra da Informação.
I don't want any comments from your big fans. I don't want.
You are jealous. You are jealous. I know you're
jealous. Green with envy.
Yeah.
Green
She's
with
saying
envy.
A big fan of Vitor and his work, who asks, how broad can this Abrahamic agreement be within the current context? We'll get into it, Patricia, if you can bear with us for another 5 or 10 minutes. I think Niram is just joining.
Niram is joining. Very good. So then we can kick off.
Elio, shalom a tutti. And that's
Shalom is a good friend. Is Elio Khabib from Italy, who's a good friend of ours, very active in pro-Israel activities. And for that, he is to be commended. Okay. Niram is on his way, is he? Is he signing in?
He's just joining.
He's joining. Very good.
So tell us, Marco, why is it that as soon as Italians take over things, nepotism and cronyism go rife,
Okay.
Niram?
Yes.
Here's Niram.
Good to see you.
Just place the... Sorry for my disgrace.
No need to apologize. David Niven need not apologize.
We were talking about the chances of Trump to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And based on Paddy Power, who are one of the biggest betting companies in Ireland. They're a serious organization.
Yes.
Trump
yes.
is number 2. He's ahead of Guterres. He's ahead of Greta, and he's ahead of who else? Zelensky. So we should take him seriously. He might win the Nobel Prize. So
it could happen. It could happen.
Could happen.
It could happen. Anyway.
I honestly, I think that even Francesco Albanese has better odds than Trump. I disagree with the betting markets because I know how degenerate the committee is. You know.
Yeah.
It seems that Francesco Albanese will have quite a hard time because, as you have been hearing, probably the latest news, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio has just declared that the USA won't tolerate any longer what she's doing, and that the USA is imposing directly sanction on Francesco Albanese. And the news just came out a few minutes ago.
Yes.
So I don't know if you are aware of what I'm talking about.
That had escaped me. Okay, that's
well,
good.
also,
you bring good tidings. Tidings.
So now we know who the next director of the BBC is going to be.
Probably.
Folks, let's start with the questions.
Go ahead.
To make this interactive. So I'm going to put Patricia's comment again for your sins in the screen. I'm going to read it out loud again. A big Brazilian fan, just said Niram knows what it's about. A big Brazilian fan of Vitor and his work, who asks, how broad can this Abrahamic agreement be within the current context? Maybe you can kick off, Rafael.
Yes, I mean, it's a very big question. I don't know if 90 minutes are going to suffice to address it, but
you have 5. You remember the rule? 5 minutes per person, huh? 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, just let me lay out that I think the focus and the most interesting, aspect of the Abrahamic agreements is not the recent, declarations or rumors regarding Hebron, but the possibility of expanding them to the Caucasus, to Azerbaijan and Armenia, because I think that incorporating, especially Armenia, a Christian country, and possibly Georgia in the future, has very important ramifications for the Accords and for the facility and the speed at which more Muslim countries are going to join these Accords and normalize relations with Israel. So I think that from our perspective, the Abraham Accords are a celebration of the common spiritual forefather of Muslims and Jews. But from the Arab perspective, since so far all the Muslim countries that have adhered to these accords have practically recognized Israel, normalized relations with Zionism, without really getting any substantial, concessions or surrenders from Israel in return. From an Arab Muslim perspective, these Abraham Accords are a fig leaf for basically surrendering to Israel and accepting that this Jewish state is here to be. And this is very nice from our perspective, but it also means that it's a far bigger challenge to convince new countries to adhere to these accords. Adding Armenia and possibly Georgia changes this, because the Abraham Accords would no longer be a bilateral agreement to accept and tolerate and legitimize Zionism. It would be a community of countries of different monotheistic traditions that agree to work each other. So this would make it far easier for the leaders of countries like Oman or like Tunisia or like Kuwait to say, look, we're entering these accords, but we're just recognizing Israel and normalizing relations with Israel because this is the precondition to be a part of these accords. It'll be far easier, and it'll make it easier also, not only for these countries to join, but for Israel and America to pay a lower price in order to entice these countries to join. Because instead of hundreds of millions of dollars in soft loans and credits or in territorial concessions, you can present this as a broader package in which normalization with Israel and Zionism is just one aspect of something broader, bigger, and more palatable to Arab Muslim public opinion.
So before I pass to Niram, I just want to encourage people to write their comments, questions in the chat if they haven't subscribed to do it, because that's very good for us to promote our content. And if they can like and share, that's also a massive support. Niram, your thoughts on the possibility of Hebron joining the Abraham Accords?
Hebron. Well, I think this is a very interesting. It's not a new idea, but it's indeed is something quite new, because it came out very recently. In Israel, Dr. Mordechai Kedar has been very outspoken for years and years about this paradigm of Arab society, this model, let's say, because he thinks that, of course, he doesn't believe in the feasibility of a Palestinian state, of an Arab state, a small Arab state, and he thinks that it's far more rooted in the mentality of Arabs. And indeed, he's completely right. The idea of an emirate, something that comes out, that is created and is by a family, by a clan, because as we know, and this is very important to understand on the anthropological and sociological, cultural level, Arab society is a society which is made of families, which is made of clans, which is a tribal society. And we have the Jabari family. We are talking about the Jabari family in Hebron, which is an important family there, and the sheikhs that have been proposing to create an emirate in Hebron come from the Jabari family. And obviously, we also know very well that the common, the acknowledged emirates are all societies, are all micro-states held by families. Because in Saudi Arabia is, of course, the state of the Al Saud family. Qatar is the state of the Al Tahani family, and so on and on. So I think this is it makes a lot of sense, and of course creates a lot of problems to those who endorse the idea of a Palestinian state, who are mainly in the West, because not only I'm saying mainly, because if we want to make a reference to the Abraham Accords, we need to remember that Mohammed bin Salman, who is the heir of the Saudi, will be the future king of Saudi Arabia, has said recently, and not so recently, that a Palestinian state, in one form or another, is a necessary precondition to the coming of the Abraham Accords. Now we don't know exactly if this is what he thinks really at the bottom of his heart, if he's saying what he says in order to make a favor, to endorse the position of his very old and ill father, and to appease the Arab. No, I'm not going to say the Arab population at its largest, but many people in the Arab world, or if he really believes that this is the real precondition of the birth of Saudi Arabia coming inside the Abraham Accords. Because when we talk about the Abraham Accords, we need to understand that the most important country for the Abraham Accords to have real substance is Saudi Arabia, for obvious reasons. because Saudi Arabia is the state who is the custodian of the holy sites of Islam, of course. So if Saudi Arabia it will be the crown of the Abraham Accords if Saudi Arabia at the bottom at the end will decide to endorse the Abraham Accords.
Yes, you say your observations are very acute, Niram, and I think you're right about that. Of course, the Abraham Accords in the initial phase couldn't have come about without the tacit approval, of course, of the Saudis. So I think what you say is correct, and I also believe that if they are to succeed, the Saudis have to wean their population, and indeed the Muslim population at large, off the notion of Palestinism, because it's not going to happen overnight. It can't happen overnight in the sense that for many years they were the prime sponsors of Palestinism. So it's something that has to be done in a very delicate and slow and gentle way, especially for the Arab public, a sort of a slowly, shuya shuya, as they say in Arabic. It is something to disconnect from Palestinism easily. It's too big a morsel for the metabolism to manage at the moment. But I think there are rumblings in general of discontent and an understanding that it was a deeply flawed approach with regard to Israel. Of course, yes, Hebron is a very important example, and your analysis certainly I agree with regard to the nature of much of Arab society, of course, and certainly with regard to what the situation in Hebron, which basically is run by important families. And not only that, Hebron is one of the few regions within the land of Israel in which the Arab population has created a real and viable economy. It is a very dynamic and productive area, and it accounts for a very significant proportion of the economy within areas under PA control. So there are a number of factors which can facilitate such a movement towards the Abraham Accords. Of course, Israel must tread extremely carefully. They can only succeed when Israel is strong and perceived to be such. So I think these are essential premises, and not, by the way, not to give up any historic right to the land of Israel, because I believe even within the broad scheme of the Abraham Accords, Israel should maintain overarching control of the land of Israel, taking into considerations, of course, the sensibilities of local populations, the need not to breathe down the necks of local populations and to impose values which are extraneous. So I think the premises exist for something positive to happen, but it has to be done with all the necessary care.
I'm going to pick an interesting comment here from Gustavo Holstein. He is asking if we think the new government in Syria will join the accords. No, I don't think that's something I should cross-check with Paddy Power. I think they are more busy with Trump odds to be the next Nobel Peace Prize receiver.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get that from the panel. I'll start now with Niram. What are the chances from the government in Syria to join the accords?
Niram, are you with us? Niram? There's some
He's
problem
gone.
with his connection. Go start with Rafael. Yeah, go to Rafael.
Okay, yeah, let's go for Rafael.
Okay, same question?
Yeah, the same question.
Yeah, same question. Yeah.
Okay, I think that Syria is led by former Al Qaeda people, so I mean, on pragmatic grounds, it makes perfect sense to join the Abraham Accords. On ideological grounds, there's something very, very difficult for them to do. So what I think will happen is that Syria will condition its adhesion to its Abraham Accords to Israel committing itself to advancing in some reasonably concrete way the Palestinian issue, and most importantly, on Saudi Arabia also being on board, because for obvious religious reasons, the Syrian government cannot afford to behave less Islamically than Saudi Arabia, and vice versa. Saudi Arabia cannot afford to do the same vis-a-vis the Salafists in who run the roost in Damascus now.
Marco?
Well, with regard to the new regime in Syria, I think that's probably a bridge too far for any normal human being. Basically, they are a bunch of cutthroats, and they have engaged in persecuting minorities and slaughtering Christians and Alawites. So I think there is the risk where people will try to be too clever, okay, and believe that you can cut a deal with anyone. I think that ultimately it will fail. Perhaps not in the immediate future, but even a few years down the line, and that might even compound the situation. So I know we see people who now dress in double-breasted suits going around. They've been recycled and laundered to some extent, but it's a film we've seen before, especially with people like Yasser Arafat and all his bedfellows. I think people should have learnt that lesson by now, but apparently not.
I think Niram is having some issues to rejoin. Yeah.
Rafael too is a little bit. He looks like the Wizard of Oz at the moment.
Yeah,
you're having some issues there.
It's increasingly obvious that my library is far less beautiful than the one I have.
No, but you're coming across as a ghostly figure. I'm a little bit concerned.
Did I tell
Niram, have you heard the question, or I can put it on the screen for you? No, sir, it's not this one. Do you think the new government in Syria will join the Accords, the Abraham Accords? I think Niram is having audio issues.
Niram, you're having problems there. Niram.
Can you hear us?
He doesn't seem to be. I'm a little. Niram, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know if you hear me. But
well, now we can. Now we
can.
Connection.
Yeah. Now we can hear you. So the question was about the likelihood or the possibility of the Syrian regime adhering to the Abraham Accords, but he. Well, I don't think we're going to get any answers in the foreseeable future. Okay.
Yeah, so I would like to add a point that I think is important to mention. It's not all or nothing. I think a lot of the peace and normalization can happen de facto and at a later stage de jure. I mean, we all talk about the accords with the Emirates and with Bahrain as suddenly ushering in this wonderful commercial business tourism ties, but it was an open secret that for several years Israeli companies did business beautifully in Dubai, in Doha, in not Doha, in Manama, and in Abu Dhabi. So I think this is important because once something happens de facto, it's much easier to convince people that it's ethical and to be honest about what's going on. And I think that without these under the table ties, it wouldn't have been possible to go from 0 to 100 with any of these countries that have signed the Abraham Accords.
Yes, of course, what you say is perfectly true. There have certainly been back channels which have been used. Trade has been conducted, so it isn't anything new. And but if momentum generates, more people will want to jump on the bandwagon, as it were. But I think there should be the caveat that it cannot be a repeat of Oslo, and Oslo was something which weakened Israel and which could not but weaken Israel. Israel basically gave away the gains that had been made in the war. So that would be an extremely flawed approach, which one would hope that the Abraham Accords would not generate.
And this is exactly why these de facto facts on the ground are so important. You can imagine a scenario where in the coming decade, Israel trades, does business, invests with Saudi Arabia, even though Saudi Arabia doesn't join the Abraham Accords. And the reason this is valuable is because if you sign the Abraham Accords now, you have to make relatively big concessions. In 10 years, it becomes basically a stamp of something that already exists. So the concessions that need to be made are not necessarily so significant.
Yeah. Niram, are you back with us?
I hope so.
Yes, you look. I see. You look much better now. You looked a tired figure before, but now you have been revived. You have been revived, and we wish to hear your words of wisdom and wise counsel.
Thank you very much. Well, I've lost what you were talking about, so I don't know exactly at what stage are we of the conversation. I heard some words that Rafael
we did not progress. We are still discussing the chances of the new government in Syria joining the Abraham Accords. We couldn't move on without your insights.
Indeed.
You give me a lot of responsibility. So you were talking about Syria entering the Abraham's Accord eventually. Well, this is certainly something that Donald Trump wishes. But I would like to be. I think it's very important to be very cautious about Syria right now, and about what is going on in Syria, because it seems that the United States and the Trump administration especially is pushing things a bit too forward. This is my opinion. So Trump has been. Is very enthusiastic about the new Syrian president, who was a former jihadist, as we know, and now he wears a nice white shirt with a starched collar and a tie. But I think we need some more time to understand exactly what is going on and to give credit to Syria. It might be possible that Syria will be part of the Abraham Accords in the future, but as I said previously, I think we need to be quite cautious. And Israel right now is still very, very present at the borders of Syria and trying to take control of zones that might be a danger for Israel. Right now, Syria is not a danger for Israel at all, but we need to understand better what is going on. So we don't yet have a clear picture. This is my opinion.
So in some way you see a possibility of the conversion of al-Julani on the road to Damascus, it appears.
Yes, why not?
Echoing St. Paul, echoing Paul of Tarsus.
Yes, why not? Why not? We need to understand this. Certainly, it would be good for him, and to have good relations with Israel. And at the same time, it will be important for him to join, because this will mean he will have benefits from the United States. This is quite.
I recall the benefits many states had, or many organizations had, from the United States, and then we have the examples of the blowback on numerous occasions. So I tend to be very skeptical about cutthroat personalities in suits and in kefias. Before you disconnected, I mentioned the gentleman called Yasser Arafat who donned and his clique who donned double-breasted suits, and I think we've seen that film before. I place no trust in any accords with these people. I think the most that can be attained is a Cold War, where they at the first opportunity, or what they deem to be the first opportunity, they will exploit it to Israel's detriment. I'll be frank with you with that. I think Trump, with all due respect, and he's done some very good things, and I think his desire to avoid wars is very good, but I think this is a bridge too far. It's a bridge too far.
I totally agree. I think
Trump.
Yes.
So there's a comment here from Patricia that I want to bring. Sorry to cut you off, Niram. She's saying at this moment, I cannot figure it out how Israel will be in the world context in the next 2 or 3 years. What extent cooperation between Trump and Netanyahu can bring to the Abraham Accords in short and mid-term? Any guess, Niram?
It's very, very hard to say, because this is connected to the main issue right now, which is still Gaza. We don't yet clearly understand what is going on and what will be a so-called agreement. What a so-called agreement with Hamas could entail. Because we have a murky landscape. Because at the same, on one side, we hear Netanyahu repeating over and over, and he has said this very, very clearly recently in Washington, that Hamas cannot stay in Gaza. That the main aim. One of the main aim, the other is of course is the rescue of the hostages, is the destruction of Hamas, is getting rid of Hamas. At the same time, we also understand very clearly that Hamas will not easily accept to leave Gaza. So we have this two very contradictory issues, and if they make an agreement with Hamas, Hamas has been very clear from the beginning that they wish the war to end, and they wish the IDF to leave Gaza, and this will mean the victory of Hamas. So we have two visions that are absolutely in opposition, one with the other, of course. So the Abraham Accords cannot, and I think cannot really be taken too seriously if the war in Gaza is not ended in some way, and an achievement for Israel is made. So we are putting the cart before the horse, really, and we need to understand that we cannot push ourselves too forward in expectations, if not after the situation in Gaza is going to be clear enough.
Yes, you're perfectly right. Anything but a victory in Gaza will be perceived as a victory by the terrorist Palestinist Hamas. That is perfectly clear. Even if Gaza's destroyed, but they remain in some shape or form, they will represent it as some kind of victory. But they must, from Israel's point of view, they must be totally removed.
Exactly.
Another comment here from Gustavo. what's your opinion of Nick Barkat? For people who don't know who Nick Barkat is.
Near.
Yeah, sorry, I miss my glasses here. I want to look handsome all the time, and that's what happens. Nir Barkat, he is a Minister of Economy and Industry of the State of Israel. What's your opinion of him, Rafa?
To whom is the question? To whom is this question addressed?
Rafael?
I haven't been following Nir. I remember following him when I was in Jerusalem 15 years ago when he was the mayor of the city, but please ask the question to either Nir or to Marco.
He was certainly a very capable mayor. He was certainly a very successful entrepreneur as well. No, he certainly put the city on a very strong footing, and it has remained on that footing. All one needs to do is look at the public work. I think he's a very capable politician. I had some misgivings about his belonging to a party called Kadima, which I believe was a party of opportunists, exiles from the Likud who went along with the so-called disengagement. So I don't think that was a badge of honor, but certainly he is a very capable politician, and he has been central to this initiative with regard to the important families in Hebron who want to adhere to the Abraham Accords. Yeah. Well, I think he certainly regrets any involvement in a party that was involved in the disengagement. So I think many people have understood the disaster that has been brought upon the state of Israel by the so-called disengagement.
Do you want to add something, Niram?
Not really. I was listening to what Marco was just saying about Nir Barkat, who I know he knows better than I do, and so I don't have to add. I don't feel to add anything particular to what he just said on this issue.
I would like to offer a more
topic
less.
Don't mind.
Could I offer my perspective on the issue of Hebron?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So,
go ahead.
I agree with. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rafael.
Okay, so I agree with Niram's assessment of the situation. I just draw conclusions that are less optimistic than either Niram's and Marco's. I really don't think that the intention of this statement of the Hebron Sheikhs is what it is, because what they're asking to join the Abraham Accords is akin to, let's say, the mayor of Barcelona asking to join NATO, or the mayors of Corsica asking to join the European Union. If you can do that, you need to have autonomy, and the most pragmatic and plausible way of achieving this autonomy or separation from the Palestinian Authority is to request that Hebron be incorporated to Area C, which is ruled and policed by Israel. The fact they didn't do this, but instead went straight into demanding recognition as, let's say, an independent canton as part of the Abraham Accords, to me suggests two things. First, they're trying to basically challenge the Palestinian Authority and get either political or monetary concessions in return, or bribes, let's say, or basically they're trying to secure the same advantages from Israel by giving an endorsement, at least on paper, to the ideas of Professor Kedar, which are acceptable and very popular among the people in the current government. But I really don't think there is a roadmap to transforming this statement into something viable, because there are no signs. I would really like to read Al-Quds and the other Palestinian newspapers to see if these statements have been made in English to an international audience, or whether these sheikhs are trying to canvass support among their own people and citizens.
That's a good point, Rafa, but it seems that in Hebron or in the West Bank, the request was taken very seriously because, as a matter of fact, someone already went after his car last night. So I just want to share an article that myself and Marco were reviewing offline. That's also from the Times of Israel. I just want to read the headlines. Car of Hebron Sheikh, who proposes leaving PA for peace deal with Israel, stayed tortured overnight. So it seems that his words are raising some alerts in the West Bank.
You know, I mean, let me play devil's advocate, but you know, there's another instance of a, you know, supposedly moderate, idealistic peacemaker in Jerusalem whose car was also torched, allegedly for doing something very noble. It turns out that you know, it was business rivals that did that. So I mean, we should be very skeptical and even cynical because maybe, you know, it's not really what it seems to be.
Possibly. But perhaps that the reason that the fact that there isn't a roadmap, maybe that might be a positive sign. Rigid schemes very often don't generate good results. Sometimes things need to develop in an organic way. So it's certainly interesting. But Israel, of course, I mean, it depends how one interprets it. I mean, if Israel has full security control, there's no reason why it couldn't work. Of course, we are dealing, and of course, one has to remember the pogrom of 1929, and this should raise concerns as well. The descendants of these people presumably still live in Hebron. Any adherence to the Abraham Accords really need to address the problem of Palestinization and this type of education that obviously people have been receiving in some shape or form over the past 40 years. So there's a lot of work to be done. That's clear. Israel has to be very strong and state and make very, very serious, attach very serious conditions. But I don't think anybody here should entertain the illusion of some kind of independent state. That would be I don't think that is the point that we need to address. We're talking about some kind of autonomy, which may be also to the benefit of Israel. Recognizing the reality of Arab society, that it is a tribal society, that it isn't in sync with Western liberal democratic norms. And this is not a criticism of Arab society. This is not it's just a recognition that there are different societal dynamics which may need to be accommodated in a new way.
I was actually in a podcast yesterday. I mean, I know you watched part of it, Marco, and one of the participants mentioned that there are radicals living on the West Bank on both sides. So not only among the Palestinians, but also some radical Jews. Do you share the same view, Marco?
No, I don't share the same view. I don't think there is a symmetry. I think that is extremely misleading. I think if we look at things within a regime of cause and effect, there's no comparison to be drawn. If there are radicals, it's because they have been driven to that. Of course, and when the Israeli state hasn't done what it should have done to safeguard the Jewish population, I think people will take matters into their own hands. In a sense, when Israel hasn't defended the Jewish community sufficiently, I see it as a breach of contract with the citizens. Of course, in every reality there are hotheads. That's a fact of life. But I don't think we can say extremists on both sides. I think that's an extreme that is a distortion of reality.
I'm also curious in your first-hand perception of Hebron. I know as a licensed tour guide, you probably have been there and quite a few times. So, what was your understanding of the vibe in Hebron, say before October 7?
To be frank, it isn't really on the itinerary at the moment, and I haven't been there that often, but I do know people there, and they explain, natives and people who have family who are from important families there, and they do give me an explanation, some explanations, and while they're not necessarily explicit, I've tried to join the dots during the course of our conversation here. There is certainly an ambivalent relationship with the PA. The perception that I received that the real power in Hebron lies with the important families and with their important economic interests, because it's the only city in Judea which has a real and vibrant economy, where there is a real entrepreneurial spirit. It has a viable economy. They produce many things there. So it is distinctly different from many of the other cities in Judea. Another factor which was brought to my attention, that refugee camps are largely absent in the Hebron area. And this apparently is the reason for sort of a different dynamic. The so-called refugee camps, because they're not really refugee camps, but those that are called refugee camps are a source of great friction.
Back in the days when you were touring around Israel, were the tours also including parts of the West Bank, say Bethlehem and all that?
Bethlehem, certainly. Bethlehem is certainly on the circuit. Certainly, I went there very often, and my relations were very good with the local people as well, I must add. Of course, one has to be aware that there is a particular situation, that one does go there as a guide, so with tourists, so one's perceptions are conditioned by the role which one is playing, but there are people there who want to. Bethlehem, the problem with Bethlehem is that much of the original Christian population has left. And that is a huge problem. The most dynamic, the most business-minded, much of that population has left. The population in Bethlehem now of Christians is around 20%, whereas before the Oslo Accords, it was 80%. And they, of course, the Christian population constitute the more educated component of the population. The economy, to a great extent, is still in the hands of the Christian population, especially in the field of tourism and producing souvenirs for tourists. So a lot of it still revolves around the Christian population. The mayor has to be a Christian. But obviously, the huge demographic change has imperiled the existence of the Christian communities, and I'm aware of what they're going through. It can't be very nice.
Rafael, Niram, did any of you visit the West Bank when you were in Israel? If you haven't, it's fine,
Yes,
because I'll be the first to say I haven't. So you did.
Yes, I mean, I worked 2 years in Soros Open the Society Foundation NGO, so I was all over the place, Ramallah, Hebron, and Bethlehem, and it was very interesting to, see the whole industry that has, mushroomed around NGOs and international donors just pumping money for projects where one sees a lot of paperwork, a lot of nice websites, but on the ground everything is as before.
Yeah.
Is there a massive difference when you cross the border, or you don't really notice?
Well, yes, I mean, there is a clearly difference because economically it's lags far behind Israel, and yes, I mean, it's a very funny sensation to be in Jerusalem, feel completely safe, and then find yourself on the other side, and be terrorized when a Israeli friend calls you, thinking that if the Hebrew is overheard, you might end up in a very unpleasant situation. So, but I mean, on the whole, as long as people think or know you're connected to Zionism or Jews, they're very completely adorable.
Yeah. Niram?
Yes, sorry. Yes, I've been there in the past, but mainly I've been in the C zone, so with friends, and I haven't stayed there longer. I went a couple of times, and I agree with what Rafael said just now about the different, but it depends exactly where you go. Of course, if you go inside the depth of I haven't been there with the so-called settlers. I have a friend who has been there, and for a time doing because I haven't had the chance yet to do that. I would have liked to do that, especially because in the past I had the idea at a certain point, at a certain stage, to write a book about this reality, and an essay, and it hasn't yet come about. Maybe it will in the future. I don't know, but you need to gain confidence and to be very 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 honest intellectually in telling what really we are talking about this reality, which is so very badly represented in the press and outside of Israel, but also, as Marco knows very well, also inside Israel itself by the so-called progressive settlers are the bad Jews and those people, villains. I would like just to make a reference to what we were talking about before, about Hebron, about how about the Sheikh Jabari statement, and because I was reading just yesterday an article by Seth Mandel, who writes for the commentary. The commentary is one of the most interesting and let's say highbrow magazines of Jewish culture and Jewish politics and in the United States, which has been created in the 50s by John Podhoretz. And he wrote an article about this matter, and it's very interesting because he mentioned in the article another article which appeared in the Wall Street Journal by Elliot Kaufman, and this article Kaufman says that after the statement of Sheikh Jabari, the PA threatened, I'm just reading, threatened to withhold salaries and pension payments from the Jabari clan over this letter. So, and the PA, this was what the Kaufman, Elliot Kaufman writes in this article, in this newspaper article, is trying to split the Jabari family by strong arming or enticing some members to denounce others. So the letter of Sheikh Jabari has created some turmoil. This seemed very clear from what Elliot Kaufman is reporting in the new Wall Street Journal. So they haven't liked at all what Sheikh Jabari has said. So you were before you were mentioning this article in the Times of Israel about the torching of a car, and now I'm mentioning something which I didn't know about this episode. Now I'm mentioning something which I think is even more serious, because if the PA is acting in the way in which it is reported, it means that they are taking this idea quite seriously, and it's very understandable, because it will take away power from them. It will take them away power from them, and they don't want to take the power, to have power taken away from them. So we need to understand that we have tribes, and we have different clans, and they don't go very well along with each other, and they want to have their sector of power and govern it. And so if someone else, another family or someone else, is threatening it, well, it's not going to be easy for them to achieve this aim.
Yes, you raise an interesting point. And I think what must be borne in mind is that, unfortunately, it was the Oslo government which introduced these foreign elements, which have caused a lot of the havoc, and to a great extent it's Israeli governments which have empowered the PA. To a great extent, the PA, unfortunately, and we have to state things for what they are, was created by the Oslo regime. I don't think that we can escape that fact. Israeli governments and the vested interests of people around left-wing Osloid governments have, to a great extent, created the situation which we now witness in the Palestinian Authority. I think that is an important element here to remember.
Indeed, it is an important element to remember. And as a matter of fact, Seth Mandel, in his article on commentary, exactly mentioned the Oslo Accords and the fact that the PA has been endorsed with power by Israel, and is still, to a certain extent, I don't know to what extent exactly, collaborating with Israel in order in Judea and Samaria in order to contrast the Hamas factions that are over there. And this is something that is quite well known, that there is a strong, even if they at times seems to be friendly with each other, but we know what happened in Gaza in 2007, and when Fatah was thrown out from Gaza and Hamas took full power. So they are always fighting among each other. It's a sort of
Niram, I'd like to ask you a question. I think something very important here is the position that Hamas will take vis-a-vis this conflict between the sheikhs of Hebron and the Palestinian Authority. Do you think they will side with the sheikhs to weaken Fatah, their big rivals, or with Abu Mazen to make sure that these colors of Zionism are destroyed? What do you think will happen?
Well, this is a very interesting question, Rafael. Thanks for asking. It's very difficult to understand what game is Hamas at this stage really capable of playing, because we don't really know what is going on exactly in Gaza. We have been reading this report that was published by the BBC regarding a Hamas politician who has left Gaza. I think, if I remember right, from at the beginning of October, And I don't know what kind of information he has, but he has been saying that in this moment, at this stage, Hamas has lost the 80% of the control of Gaza. So this means that Hamas has yet power, but is a very, very brittle power. At the same point, we hear that Hamas has among its effectives 20,000, 20 to 25,000 people who are not as expert as are and as are well trained as the previous one, of course, who had years and years of training. So the picture is quite murky. It's very difficult to understand. And again, I'm going back to what I was saying before in relation to the accord that the negotiations that are going on right now in Doha. Is Israel trying to achieve? What are the United States trying to achieve? Are they on the same page? Are they not on the same page? It's a very, to me, it's a very complex and difficult situation to make clear, to understand clearly, because there are corners that are really in the dark. So I have not answered. I understand that I have not answered in a direct way your question, Rafael, because I have the feeling that it's very difficult right now to give a simple answer to what to the question you posed.
I'd like to add one little thing that I think is...
Rafael, just to complete on your question, I'm curious to hear from Niram. So you mentioned quite a few times the role of the states, and do you think that's key in the outcome of the war in Gaza and also on the discussions with Hebron? And do you think it's that unclear given Trump being that much unpredictable?
The role of the state?
Yes, the role of the states, the America.
Then say, of course. Well, it's as you said it. You said it right now. We have to cope with the unpredictability of Donald Trump. It's very difficult to relate to someone who keeps changing ideas, or who hasn't really made up his mind clearly about what he wants. We know very, very little, if not nothing, of what went along in Washington recently when Benjamin Netanyahu was there, because, as we all know, it was not public. It was very private, and apart from the obvious ritual declaration statements, we don't know exactly what they are up to. So yes, it's difficult. It's difficult to really, as I said before. Sorry if I repeat myself again. It's really difficult to understand, to have a clear picture of what is going on. So to me, the main aim is quite clear. I mean, I have always thought, and I keep thinking, and this is very straightforward, a very simple and straightforward way of thinking, that in order to achieve a victory, for and foremost, Israel needs to have Hamas vanquished in Gaza. I don't see any other option for Israel. And so this is the main aim. Unfortunately, after 20 months of war, this aim has not yet been achieved.
You're perfectly right. You're perfectly right.
I would like to point out something that I think, unfortunately, is often forgotten since October 7 in discourse about Hamas. We conflate Hamas with as if destroying one meant destroying the other. You can defeat, kill, imprison 10, 20,000 terrorists, but that doesn't defeat Hamas, because Hamas is not just a military organization. Hamas is actually the Muslim Brotherhood. It's the political expression of Islam. And, unlike what Western journalists love to say that Hamas is some sort of radical Islamist, it is absolutely not radical, and it's absolutely not Islamist. It is, for the Muslim Arab world, the equivalent of the Christian Democrats in Europe. I mean, for Christian Democrats are to Christianity what Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas are to Islam. So the idea that you can defeat Hamas while having a population that's deeply devout is completely absurd, and we need to realize this, because otherwise we don't understand what realistic goals in the short term and what realistic goals in the long term are and need to be.
Yeah. So what's the point in fighting Hamas, Rafael? What's the point in stepping into Gaza? And
no. I mean, we have to realize that we can win the war in the short term by defeating the Al-Nukba terrorists, the Al-Qassam brigades, and so on. But in the long run, the only way you can eliminate the threat of jihadism is basically to wean the population of certain beliefs in the same way that was done in Central Asia, thanks to 70 years of atheist communism. Because only when the population of Gaza will be secularized and the population of Ramallah and of Hebron will be secularized, will jihadism really, really end.
I think that Rafael has been posing has stated something very, very, very important. I completely agree with him. We need to understand something, that even in Israel, as we hope, as we all hope, will vanquish Hamas in Gaza. This means that afterwards Israel will need to stay there for a long period, because in order to, there is something that we need to understand very clearly. Hamas is a genuine product of Gaza, of the population that is there. It hasn't taken the population into captivity. As the Third Reich during the 40s didn't take Germany in captivity. Before Hitler went to the Bundestag and became Chancellor of Germany, what his propaganda and his plans for Germany were heard for 13 years before. Hamas was born in the 80s, and before it was voted not with a narrow majority, but with a large majority in 2005, in Gaza. People in Gaza had been knowing Hamas for 18 years, almost 20 years. So when I hear people who try to say divorce Hamas from Gaza, I simply laugh, because Hamas is a product of that population, of those people. And as Rafael said very well before, these people are devout to Gaza. Of course, to Hamas. Of course, there are also people who are against Gaza, who don't like, against Hamas, who don't like Hamas, but they are really a minority. There were also people who were against Adolf Hitler during the Third Reich, but they were not certainly the majority of the Germans. The problem is that after going back to the Second World War, after the Allied powers took hold of occupied Western Germany for 10 years, there was democracy. We had people like Adenauer, of course. I don't see any Adenauer coming up easily from Gaza. So we need to understand that we're talking about the Middle East. We're not talking about Germany, and we're not even talking about Japan, because Japan, after 11 years of American occupation, when the Americans left, they told the Japanese, okay, now show to the world what you are capable of doing, and they did, of course, very well.
Niram, you're completely right, but I think we should, when we say occupation, I think we cannot limit this to basically a security issue. It's an education issue. The real crime that Israel committed was not allowing the Palestinian Authority to have weapons and guns and so on, but basically to completely delegate the education of a whole generation of Arab children to former terrorists and terrorists. They have been brainwashed for almost 30 years to hate Israel, to hate Jews, not just in Judea and Samaria, but also in Gaza. And, people like my friend David Bedine, who have made the most strenuous efforts to denounce the complicity of UNRWA, of your donors, in the funding of school books that are openly jihadist, openly anti-Semitic, have basically been largely ignored and have not really earned the attention and the concern that this should have roused at the beginning among Israeli policymakers. Because yes, you can stop getting people from securing guns and weapons, but if they want to use them, sooner or later they're going to find a way to get them. But if you teach them values that further coexistence, peace, tolerance, then the security issue is solved on its own in the middle and long term. So every solution in Gaza and in the West Bank must first of all ensure that from now on, children there are taught the values as similar as possible to those that are taught in Jewish schools and in Christian schools all over the world.
Okay, so yes, we come to an end. There's just a comment here that I would like Marco to review, since it's a.
But let Niram say what. Sorry, we've interrupted. Niram wanted to add something. Let him, and then I can comment.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was just briefly commenting to what Rafael said, and I agree with him. But I would like to add to what he said. A comment in French by General de Gaulle: "Vaste programme." That of educating a vast program. It will take years and years and years and years. It will not certainly happen in a few years. But certainly.
But Niram, look at the situation in Gaza now. I mean, for 18 months, there's absolutely zero chance that Hamas can win against Israel. But they have indoctrinated their young generation so fanatically that even the Japanese during World War II are not fighting in such, militarily desperate situation. I mean, they've completely brainwashed the whole generation like robots.
Yeah.
Marco, do you want to say a couple of words about this comment coming from Liberty Strikes?
Liberty Strikes. In 2020, Ireland became like 1930s Germany. I'm not sure I'm in a position to say that. Perhaps we could invite this gentleman or lady to.
He's a gentleman.
You know whom to participate in a podcast and tell us a little bit more. Certainly at an official level, yes, I can certainly see that. What the man in the street believes, I suspect it's a little bit different. I suspect the ordinary Irish person is beginning to understand that things are not quite as they've been portrayed in the media and as they have been taught in academia. That is my instinctive understanding without deep analysis.
And as a matter of fact, the process are just happening more and more often, and it's not just the frequency. The number of people joining the process has largely increased. So I think there is hope. There is hope on that. So hope.
I think Golan was the most popular singer in Ireland. So I mean, that's an encouraging sign.
Sorry, I didn't hear a comment.
No, the Israeli singer at Eurovision was the most popular one in Ireland. Got the 12 points, I believe.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and on top of that, RTE, the national TV, also gave, if I'm not mistaken, 8 or 10 points, which is almost the maximum that you can give. So it's not only the average person, but also the the Iran official who are recognizing Israel. So, and as Marco said, the government is extreme. Native population knows we are being scammed.
Yeah, the government seems to have it. Well, it doesn't seem it has an obsession with Israel, which bears witness to a peculiar mental state. This is I hold this position. It is full blown Palestine, full blown, and I hope terminal too.
I like that Palestine. Okay, let's come to an end. Let's see how much we influenced the chances of Donald Trump winning the Nobel Peace Prize. So I'm going to show the ranking again. I know you missed it, Niram. That's something that you should be aware of. The chances of Trump winning the Nobel Peace Prize. This is serious figures. This is coming from one of the most reputed betting organizations in Ireland, Paddy Power. So it should be taken into consideration, probably more than my own words. So I'm just going to show you here. You want to guess where in the ranking is Trump? He's in the top 10, Niram. Where do you think is Trump?
Hazard a guess.
At the top?
Yeah, he's in the top 10. So just where about in the top 10 do you think is Trump?
We're about at the top 10 in second position.
Second position. I think you should create an account in Paddy Power, because that's exactly their view. Maybe you are a Paddy Power.
That's why we invite. That's why we invite him. That's why he's a betting expert.
Yeah. So here it is. Donald Trump, number 2.
Okay.
On the odds, right after the widow of Mr. Navalny. I don't know how to pronounce her name. He's ahead of Zelensky, Guterres,
Yes.
I don't know who is Jose Andres.
No, Vitor, I think that to make everyone happy, the Nobel Peace Prize is going to be won jointly by Trump and by Guterres.
There are some funny names here at the bottom. I was just checking. We even have Elon Musk and Taylor Swift. Even Taylor Swift is so everything is possible. So here is the encouragement for people who are struggling with inflation. Bet on Donald Trump to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe you're going to get a surprise. When is the Nobel Prize awarded? Do you remember?
I have no idea. I follow it as much as I follow the Olympics nowadays and the World Cup. Zero. Total disinterest.
Marco, you are living in a cave.
I'm living in my own world.
In the fall. I don't know when in the fall, but it's awarded in the fall. But anyway, if you think that the Nobel Prize was awarded to Yasser Arafat and then it was awarded to Barack Obama, well, it can be awarded.
Indeed.
That's what Patricia is mentioning here.
Indeed.
Well,
indeed.
once Yasser Arafat was the winner in 1994.
Yeah.
If Yasser Arafat, why not Taylor Swift? Why not Kanye West?
Well,
I once joked that the best way to derail a peace process is to award a Nobel Peace Prize to its initiator.
Right. Okay. I'm going to come to a closure. There's some noise on the background.
Who's the guilty party?
Niram.
Elementary, my dear Watson.
But Niram, was it the Tando you were listening to?
Right, folks. So thanks for the insights. Make sure you submit your bets. Now you know the figures. So we'll be here next week. Marco, I won't be able to do it on Wednesday, so we need to.
We'll come to
up with a different date.
We'll come to an equitable arrangement. Yeah.
So I want to encourage everyone to subscribe, like, share. Those 3 buttons are below, and they are the best way to promote our stuff. If you haven't decide what to do with your time off, maybe you can contact our device and they can tailor a tool for you guys. If you haven't figured it out what to wear this summer, maybe you can reach out to Royi Berkovitz. He has very nice clothing. Maybe you can also order for your friends and family. And and then I want to also mention that Sunday I'm having a podcast about travel. So I'm having a Polish-Mexican couple. We'll discuss travel in the current day and age. That's not exactly the topic we discuss here, but maybe there are some individuals interested on this theme. So that's it for today. I wish everyone a good evening, and we'll see each other very soon. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.